A lot of people are speculating that Determination is going to be nerfed in 3.19. And if you look at the numbers alone, it's very likely. 76% of the characters on Pewee Ninja are currently using Determination. An additional 67% use Defiance Banner. Meanwhile, only 31% use Grace. That certainly doesn't seem like a healthy balance when the most commonly used main defensive aura is 2.5 times more common than the next best. But I don't think Determination is actually the problem here. In fact, sometimes defensive synergies are more complicated than they at first seem, and nerfing Determination may not resolve the underlying issues which have led to the massive popularity this aura enjoyed in the past 3 leagues. So today, I'm going to start with a few basics about defenses, as I want to build a little bit of an understanding to lay the groundwork for my arguments. Then I'm going to get into the current defensive situation, what some of the problems I see are, and why these underlying synergies may be the cause, so the answer is of course addressing them directly, which is exactly what I'll move on to do next, talking about Determination and speculating what form a nerf might take, or some alternative solutions that I can think of. Defenses in Path of Exile are important, and understanding them properly can be the difference between survival and failure. There's a lot of stats in Path of Exile which broadly fall under what players refer to as defenses. They allow you to reduce damage, avoid damage, or maybe recover resources after you take damage. But defenses in Path of Exile more broadly is not today's topic. So for the purposes of this video, when I say defenses, you can understand that to mean armor, evasion, energy shield, or ward. And ward is its own special case, thus completely outside the purview of this video. So what are these defenses and how do they operate? Energy shield acts as a health pool. Non-chaos damage will be applied to your energy shield before your life, and unlike life, energy shield will innately seek to recharge itself if you haven't taken damage for a bit. If you want more energy shield, I suggest using the discipline aura, as that grants you flat energy shield which is then scaled by your increases and reductions. Evasion, on the other hand, gives you a chance to avoid attacks. It will not apply to spells and does not apply to damage over time effects. Evasion can also cancel out enemy critical strikes, but for more on that, check out my video Accuracy and Critical Strikes in Path of Exile, which should be in the card right now. Evasion uses the entropy system, so it's unlikely that you will take 2 hits consecutively, but you are always going to take a hit occasionally. The associated aura for evasion is Grace. Grace grants flat evasion, which again is scaled by your increases and reductions, but also has a more evasion multiplier, which is of course separate from your increases and reductions and stacks with them multiplicatively. Then we have armor, which protects you from physical hits with the level of protection scaled by the magnitude of the incoming hit. Normally, it will not protect you from damage over time or elemental damage, but it does apply to both attacks and spells. Because the protection decreases the larger the incoming hit is, armor is ideal for protecting yourself against small hits, but largely ineffective against single massive hits, such as an enemy crit strike. If you want more armor, you can turn on Determination, which will grant you flat armor, scaled by your increases and reductions, along with granting a hefty more armor multiplier, which works exactly the same way the one for Grace did. So if you compare each of these defenses at face value, they all have their strengths and their weaknesses. They all have situations where they excel and situations where they simply do nothing at all. Physical damage is of particular danger in Path of Exile, so I can see why armor might have some emphasis from that as a result. But there are other ways to deal with physical damage, such as physical damage from hits taken as elemental damage, or stacking endurance charges in combination with additional physical damage reduction or less physical damage taken from hits, cut, or less physical damage taken via Immortal Call. But even for enemies that deal little to no physical damage, armor is still one of the best defenses you can have right now. And this is where we get into some of those problematic synergies that I mentioned at the start of the video. Molten Shell is a guard skill, which gives you an absorb effect that takes 75% of damage from hits to the buff before your life or energy shield. Molten Shell absorbs up to 10,000 damage if you have at least 50,000 armor. This means if you use something like a cast on damage taken Molten Shell, you'll be able to protect yourself from physical, elemental, or chaos hits. If you're wondering, are a lot of people using this? Yes, they are. About 70% of characters on Pewee Ninja are using Molten Shell. It's far more powerful than any of the other guard skills we have right now, especially because you don't even need a level 21 gem. A level 1 Molten Shell is almost just as effective as a level 21 because, again, the main scale factor for Molten Shell isn't gem level, it's armor. For a point of comparison, a level 20 Steel Skin has the same 155 strength requirement as a level 20 Molten Shell, but it only gives 2,209 to its absorb. And herein lies the problem. Molten Shell has warped the defensive meta in Path of Exile. And if you're going to be using Molten Shell, you need armor. If you want armor, you're probably using Determination. Next up, I'm going to talk about why it's a mistake to just nerf Determination in response to this setup. Before I do though, a quick reminder that if you're enjoying the video or you found it informative, please do leave a like as that really helps me out. For more content, be sure to subscribe and keep an eye out as I'm going to be talking about more League Start stuff in the near future. Or if you want to see another video after this that'll be available immediately, check out my second channel, 10 Gaming Thoughts, where I talked about a really fun indie RPG by the name of Moonlighter. A special thanks to my patrons and YouTube channel members for the continued support, but more about that at the end. For now, why is nerfing Determination a problem? Well, for that, I want to go back and talk about Glancing Blows, because Glancing Blows was in the same situation that we see now with Determination. A vast majority of players were using it. Specifically, they were using Glancing Blows in combination with a Recover Life or Recover ES on block shield. And just like how right now Molten Shell is the real problem, in that case, the Recover ES or Life on block shields were the real problem, which is why today, we see the same thing going on. If you've ever played an Aegis Aurora build, you can easily take Glancing Blows, and you'll recover more energy shield than you lose when you're hit. In response to this, GGG nerfed Glancing Blows. First, by removing it from a Timeless Jewel and putting it on the tree, making it harder for some builds to access. Then by moving it to a different spot on the tree, making it even harder to access, and causing 65% of damage to pierce through when you block rather than 50%. The end result of this is, you almost never see Glancing Blow setups that don't also have Recovery on block. Because the underlying problem of Recovery on block was never addressed, not only does it remain somewhat of an issue today, not only are defenses as a whole in a worse place for it, but you only ever see Glancing Blows used with this problematic mechanic. So if Determination was nerfed, say by changing the more armor into increased armor, then you'd probably see something similar. People would still use Molten Shell, people would still use Determination, but anyone who uses Determination without Molten Shell is disproportionately punished, and anyone who's scaling Molten Shell is going to be using Determination anyway. So personally, I would rather fix the underlying issue than address what I consider to be one of the symptoms. And so I hope that Determination is not nerfed in 3.19. I could see Defiance Banner getting nerfed. Especially Anomalous Defiance Banner in combination with Ashes of the Stars does give you a massive amount of increased armor and evasion rating for very little opportunity cost. And since this is a somewhat specific setup that requires giving up your amulet slot and requires an aura, it probably won't impact most of the player base if the effectiveness on the alt quality was halved or even cut down to 10% of what it is currently. But this alone will not change the fact that Molten Shell is incredibly overpowered. So how do we fix that? First off, by nerfing Molten Shell directly. Either by reducing its duration so it's a potent effect with a much lower uptime, leaving a larger window where you're vulnerable to damage, or by lowering the absorb to be more in line with Steel Skin, i.e. it scales on level. That way, if you're going to use a Molten Shell, you do need it to be max level and you can't get away with a level 1. Or by allowing more damage that you take to pierce through the Molten Shell. It doesn't really matter how big the absorb is if 70% of the damage goes directly to your face. It would still help with damage smoothing, but a large single hit, like a Cirrus Meteor, could overwhelm your defenses and kill you instantly. Whereas right now, Molten Shell excels at blocking things like Cirrus Meteor. Another way to nerf Molten Shell is to make the other guard skills better. Maybe if Immortal Call had a slightly longer duration per endurance charge expended, it would be easier to get consistently high physical mitigation while ignoring armor entirely. If Steel Skin didn't require 155 strength and was instead a dex strength hybrid gem, it would be a lot easier to use a max level Steel Skin with less opportunity cost, especially if you're a dex-based build, and getting 155 strength for Determination and Molten Shell could be a bit problematic. I also think that we need some new guard skills. There should be some sort of guard skill that synergizes very well with Energy Shield, without having any specific synergies for armor or evasion. Probably something that focuses on Energy Shield's ability to recharge itself. And when it comes to evasion, that also needs some improvement. Right now there aren't that many guard skills which work well with dex builds. So another idea that I had was a guard skill which for a moderate duration causes you to take less damage if you haven't taken damage from a hit recently, similar to the old Wind Dancer effect. This would encourage you to take hits infrequently, but it means that when you take one of those hits, that hit is significantly less dangerous. Or if you happen to take a hit and then a second consecutive hit, that second hit might be buffered by the guard skill, used via cast on damage taken, thus meaning you're a lot less likely to die. If Determination is nerfed without addressing Molten Shell, my concern is it's going to push people to stack armor even harder. Instead, we need more effective ways to deal with physical damage, and especially round out defenses on characters using Evasion or Energy Shield without using armor. A new guard skill, buffs to existing ones, and more Fizz to Ellie style defenses are all good options that I'm open to as well. But I'm curious, during 3.18, did you use Determination, Molten Shell, and maybe Defiance Banner? If so, which of my proposed solutions would you most like to see? And do you have any of your own? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. A special thanks to my patrons and YouTube channel members. Your support helps keep me independent and allows me to turn down things like sketchy mobile game sponsorships. You can do so for as low as $1 a month over on Patreon, or if you want to support me completely for free, then you can join the community by hopping into my Discord, link below. If you want more content, check out my second channel, 10 Gaming Thoughts. It's a place that I use to review games, ramble my way through video essays, and a lot more. Or of course, you can just click the suggested video in the card right now. I hope you learned something today, and maybe I'll see you again sometime soon.